What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. Happy that you guys are joining me on this wonderful Monday afternoon, man. We just got done watching Cowboys-Chargers. The Cowboys walk away with the 20-17 victory. Going to be giving you guys my thoughts on that. I got some updated NFC South predictions because I don't know how many of you guys tuned in to my record predictions before the season started, but had the Carolina Panthers winning the NFC South. That isn't aging too well right now, so I got to remodify my predictions for the division. Bill Belichick, I think that we are starting to see the last of him on the sidelines for the New England Patriots. I think it's safe to say that he has dug his grave with New England. I got my college football mid-season playoff rankings. You guys know that the committee does a terrible job with these rankings every single time they come out. So I'm going to make life easier for the playoff committee this year and do their job for them. I'm giving you guys my top 25 playoff rankings. And I got a really interesting take on Michigan when it comes to where they should be ranked in the top 25. And I got some reactions to Oregon, Washington, and Colorado, Stanford. Before we start, if you're new and you haven't already, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. We go live Monday through Thursday. Remember that we're not just a YouTube channel. Every episode of the podcast is available on all podcasting platforms: Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, leave us with a 5-star review. Share the podcast with your friends, family members, and acquaintances. We will greatly appreciate it. And if you want to support the JT Sports Podcast, the best way to do so is by giving us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. It helps us rank higher in the algorithm. And plus, it helps us get brand deals and sponsors. So if you want to support the JT Sports Podcast, all you got to do is rate us 5 stars on Apple and Spotify. Type in the JT Sports Podcast or go to the description down below. There will be the links to the Apple and Spotify versions of the podcast. All right, man. So Monday Night Football, the Dallas Cowboys get back on track. They beat the LA Chargers 20-17 on the road. And even though this was a road game for Dallas, it didn't really feel like it because Dallas fans traveled pretty well to LA. And like nearly every home game is for the Chargers, it turned into a away game. And this was a very good game. All right. And to keep it 100 with you, I thought that the Dallas Cowboys were going to blow this game. Even though I picked them to win, the way that the game started to go late in the fourth quarter, you had the muff punt, which put the LA Chargers in easy scoring position. But you got to give the Dallas Cowboys a lot of credit for being able to weather the storm. And Dak Prescott, way to bounce back after having one of the worst games of his career against the San Francisco 49ers. He outplayed Justin Herbert. He was looking really good in this game, especially with his mobility. All right. Now, when it comes to Dak Prescott's ability to lead the Cowboys to a Super Bowl, we still don't have the answer to that question. Okay. Like I tell everybody before the season, we're never going to judge the Dallas Cowboys based on what they do in the regular season. We can only judge them based on what they do in the postseason. And there were a good amount of people who thought that the Chargers were going to win this game. All right, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Mike McCarthy, there was no way he was going to lose to a Brandon Staley coach team. And you look at the way this Chargers defense played. I mean, that defensive line was getting after Dak Prescott all night in this game. And I was really surprised. Now, Dallas is dealing with a lot of injuries on the offensive line. They couldn't really get the run game going like that. Dak Prescott was really big. You know, many people said that Dak Prescott doesn't have good mobility anymore. Well, that got proved wrong in this game. That boy Dak Prescott was showcasing those wheels. And this was the best I've ever seen Dak Prescott run in a very long time. Justin Herbert in this offense, you know, after the first drive, they pretty much got shut out by this defense. And you look at Kellen Moore. This was most definitely a revenge game for him, and he kind of proved Mike McCarthy right to move on from him, because this offense, outside of their first drive, they didn't do anything. And their offensive line played pretty well against one of the best defensive lines in all of the NFL. You didn't really hear Michael Parsons' name until the final drive of the game, which was the most important. Then you had the interception that Justin Herbert threw to Stephon Gilmore. This just wasn't a great offensive showing out of Kellen Moore and the Chargers offense. And this is an offense that has been amongst the best in the NFL all season up to this point, with Kellen Moore calling the plays. But it's ironic how, for the first time in a while, Brandon Staley's defense actually rose to the occasion. Now, I don't know if Brandon Staley's defense is starting to turn a corner, or if the play calling for Dallas still really isn't all that great. You know, they still are struggling to have success in the red zone. The red zone has plagued Dallas all this season so far. But the fact that even though it seemed like the Cowboys were trying to gift wrap this game to the Chargers just didn't want to win this game, it felt like. No matter what happened, right? There was a situation in the fourth quarter where it's 3rd and long, and the Chargers allowed the Dallas Cowboys to keep the drive alive due to stupid, costly penalties, man. This is what happens when you're a poorly coached team. Every time the game is on the line, the Chargers find a way to blow it. And if you are a Brandon Staley apologist, you got to stop at this point, okay? You just look foolish trying to defend Brandon Staley. He's not a good coach. Why is it that he's a defensive-minded coach, and anytime his defense needs to win the game, they can't get it done? The pass rush was getting after Dak Prescott all afternoon, but in the biggest moments, they were nowhere to be found. That's just what happens when you have a poorly coached football team. They don't execute in big moments. The Chargers find a way to fold in big moments time after time after time after time. And this was a game where it kind of felt like the Chargers might have had the advantage. You know, the Cowboys were coming off a disappointing loss against the 49ers. You kind of questioned Mike McCarthy as the play caller. You thought that Justin Herbert would be able to outplay Dak Prescott, because most of us believe that Justin Herbert is a better quarterback than Dak Prescott, but that just didn't happen. And for the Chargers to have this kind of performance on defense and still not being able to win just shows you that this is a poorly coached football team. Poorly coached football teams, they don't execute in big moments. Mike McCarthy, he may not be a great coach. You can call him a mid coach. You can call him an average coach, whatever you want to call it. There was no way he was going to get out-coached by Brandon Staley. If Mike McCarthy would have got out-coached by Brandon Staley and the Cowboys would have lost this game, I would have been extremely concerned. All right? I still view the Dallas Cowboys as contenders. Now, do I feel the same way about Dallas right now that I did before the season? Not really. I still am a little bit lower on them than I was earlier this year, but I still think that they got a great chance to win the NFC. But the Chargers defensively, you know, they gave the Cowboys a lot of issues up front. All right. But Dak Prescott, you know, he was able to carry this team tonight. And that's something that we haven't really gave Dak Prescott a lot of credit for. We haven't been able to, because anytime he's been asked to carry the Cowboys to a win, it seems like he just finds a way to melt. But in this game, it was in prime time, Monday Night Football, national audience, everybody was watching. Dak Prescott stepped up, and Justin Herbert, in the biggest moments in this game, he came up small. And people call Justin Herbert overrated because a lot of situations he finds himself in comes down to what the Chargers can do when the game is on the line. And sometimes Justin Herbert kind of can't get it done. All right? And with the performance that the Chargers got out of this defense, you would have thought that this was the perfect night for the Chargers to get this win. And both of these two teams had their fair share of penalty issues. Like the Cowboys had hella penalties. The Chargers had hella penalties. It's just that In the fourth quarter, when the game was on the line, Dallas was the more disciplined team. They were more locked in, and they were well coached. Brandon Staley, I keep trying to tell you Chargers fans and you Brandon Staley apologists that this dude is the worst coach in the NFL. The only reason the Chargers don't have one of the worst records in the National Football League is because they got a really good team. But their secondary is not good. Derwin James, outside of him, everybody else is mid or below average. Their cornerbacks suck. All right. Michael Davis was not good. He was getting cooked nearly all game. Even though he had a couple of good pass breakups and good reps, he just wasn't really that great. CeeDee Lamb got back rolling. You remember after that 49ers game how there were reports coming out how CeeDee Lamb was frustrated with his lack of touches in the offense? Well, they got that problem fixed pretty fast because we heard CeeDee Lamb's name called a lot in this game. Tony Pollard, he didn't have the night that you would have hoped for, especially going against a porous run defense. But he had a big run late in this game, which it wasn't a huge run, in my opinion. It wasn't like a 50, 60-yard run, but it was a good enough run that it was able to keep the chains moving for the Dallas Cowboys. You know, if you're a Chargers fan, you should be feeling really disappointed about this loss because Dallas gift-wrapped at you this win. You just didn't want to take it. It's like you were telling Dallas, no, like Christmas is 2 months away from now. It's too early to be accepting Christmas presents right now. That's basically what you told them. I mean, how do you and God's loving earth give up a 3rd and long due to 2 holding penalties? Not 1, but 2. Only a poorly coached football team can pull off the bull jockey that we saw tonight out of the LA Chargers. If they had Sean Payton, I felt like the Chargers would have won this game. But you got to give a round of applause to the Dallas Cowboys. Way to bounce back after a really horrible loss last week. And this was a make-or-break game for the Dallas Cowboys. Because think about what the narrative would have been if Dallas would have lost this game. They would have lost 2 straight to teams that got solid quarterbacks, solid rosters, and people would have started to call Dallas overrated. So the Dallas Cowboys, they got a really big win. And for the LA Chargers, man, like I told you guys before the season, this team is not going to make it to the playoffs. I don't care how much talent they have. I don't care if Justin Herbert is a top 5, top 10 quarterback. If you got a doofus as your head coach, you're not going to win shit. And Brandon Staley is a doofus. It sounds harsh, but it's the God-honest truth. The only way the Chargers can blow a game like that is by having poor coaching. I mean, they gave up a 3rd and long with 2 defensive penalties, man. Like, Dallas muffed the punt. They gave the Chargers great opportunity to take advantage of that, and they barely got that done. It came down to a 4th down call that resulted in a touchdown. So, I mean, the LA Chargers, man, they're a talented football team, but they're just held back by poor coaching. And it's going to be sad to see Justin Herbert on his 3rd head coach going into 2024. That means that Justin Herbert has had 3 head coaches and within the first couple of years into his NFL career. And I'm not going to say Justin Herbert is overrated, okay? Even though he could have played better in this game, I just feel like the coaching just continues to let this team down. Yeah, they did have an opportunity to win this game, but I mean, Quentin Johnston, he's a bust. He didn't do shit. Mike Williams is out. You need your 1st-round pick to step up and make big plays. And when they go to him, it results in an interception. And I don't even know if you can continue to start Quentin Johnston anymore. It just seems like anytime he's on the field, he's a liability. There was a play that the Chargers scored a touchdown on where Quentin Johnston barely even blocked the dude in front of him. I mean, the LA Chargers are a mess. This defensive line looks really good, but outside of that, this defense is terrible. And Brandon Staley is supposed to be a defensive-minded coach, and yet the worst aspect of this team happens to be defense. That's a red flag. That shows you that he's not a good head coach. And anytime you need this defense to step up and win you the game, they're not able to do so. They still found the way to lose this game. And although Justin Herbert had the opportunity to win this game, you know, you just feel like if you're a Chargers fan, there was a lot left on the table. You left a lot of crumbs at the dinner table. You didn't completely clean your plate, and that's why you lost this game. The Chargers fall to 2-3 on the season. The Dallas Cowboys are 4-2, and they got a big game coming up in the next couple of weeks, I believe against the Kansas City Chiefs. A couple of months ago, I came on here and I gave you guys my NFC South predictions before the season. And embarrassing enough, I had the Carolina Panthers winning this damn division, man. I thought these boys were going to go 9-8. I thought that Bryce Young was getting drafted into a perfect situation. Frank Wright finally got a good young quarterback instead of going with the old veteran QBs that costed him his job in Indianapolis. I thought the offensive line was going to continue to play the way that they did near the end of last season under Steve Wilkes. The Carolina Panthers, I completely whiffed on. This is the worst prediction that I've ever made out of all my years doing this podcast, and I'm really embarrassed. Okay, I really hate looking at this graphic and seeing that I had the Carolina Panthers going 9-8. These boys will be lucky enough to win even a game or two. They're just a complete disaster. They're awful. They can't block nobody. The receivers can barely get open. Their best receiver is Adam Thielen, dog. He's 33 years old. He's a grandpa. He's an old man, and yet this is the only wide receiver who continues to get open for Bryce Young. And it's Carolina Panthers fans expect Bryce Young to cook with no ingredients, man. Frank Wright, I think he's the equivalent to Urban Meyer 2.0. I don't care what anybody tells me about Bryce Young. I know what Bryce Young I saw at Alabama. And the Bryce Young that I'm seeing right now with the Carolina Panthers is not the same quarterback that I saw carry Alabama on his back during his final season. So I was wrong about the Carolina Panthers, which is why I got to give you guys my updated NFC South predictions currently right now. So I had the Carolina Panthers going 9-8, had the Falcons going 7-10, the Saints going 6-11, and the Buccaneers finishing in last place at 5-12. Now, currently, right, I got the Buccaneers winning this division at 10-7. I think that the Buccaneers have clearly showed that they're the best team in this division, and it's not really close. Todd Bowles, I know that I've had my criticisms about him. He hasn't really proven to be a winning caliber coach ever since his first couple of years with the New York Jets when he had Brandon Marshall and Ryan Fitzpatrick, and they nearly made it to the playoffs. And ever since then, he hasn't really had a winning record, and he hasn't really proven to be a good head coach. But this season, though, the Buccaneers, surprisingly, have turned the corner. Right now, they are in first place in this division at 3-2. Baker Mayfield is having a career resurgence under offensive coordinator Dave Canales, who Todd Bowles hired, who previously was the quarterback's coach for the Seattle Seahawks for a couple of years. And he's doing wonders with Baker Mayfield in this offense. And this offensive line has played pretty good. And when you look at the Buccaneers' losses, they've lost to good teams. They haven't lost to any bad teams. They lost to the Philadelphia Eagles on Monday night, and last week they lost to the Detroit Lions. Those aren't bad losses. They lost to good teams. Their 3 wins, you like the fact that they're coming against teams that you expect them to beat. And they got a very good defense, and I can't wait for Kalaje Cansey to get fully healthy, because I was really high on him when he was coming out of Pitt. This defense has played at a really high level, and this offense has proven to be functional at times, even though they struggle to run the football effectively. You got to like what you've seen out of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So they're in first place in the NFC South right now, and I'm picking them to win this division right now as far as them going into week 7. Now, the Atlanta Falcons, I think they're going to be 7-10, all right? My stance on Atlanta still hasn't changed. This defense definitely has overexceeded my expectations. This defense looks really good. As a matter of fact, the Falcons probably have one of the most underrated defenses in the NFL. I've yet to see a team just go up and down the field on Atlanta's defense. Their pass rush has improved tremendously. Their secondary still gives up a couple of big plays here or there, but for the most part, this defense has held up their end of the bargain. The offense, on the other hand, is a completely different story. And the reason for their offense being heavily inconsistent is because they got a heavily inconsistent quarterback and Desmond Ridder. And Falcons fans last week, they were quick to come at me and say, oh, JT, you were wrong about Desmond Ridder. You saw Desmond Ridder balling out. The fool had one good game, and then he reverts back to the same quarterback that he was before. He threw 3 interceptions. You cannot make any excuses for that if you're a Falcons fan. Like, look at Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith has some of the funniest facial expressions that I've ever seen, man. And when Desmond Ridder threw that interception in the red zone, that boy said he couldn't believe that shit. And at this point, you're looking at Arthur Smith, and you got to ask him, Arthur Smith, you do know that this kind of is a make-or-break year for you. If the Falcons don't at least have a winning record, you might not be around in 2024. So are you really going to put your job on the line with Desmond Ridder? Is Desmond Ridder really the kind of quarterback that you want to live and die with? If I was Arthur Smith at this point, I'm putting in Taylor Heinicke, okay? And I think eventually we will see Taylor Heinicke, which is why I think they're going to go 7-10. Taylor Heinicke isn't the greatest quarterback in the world, but he can come in and win you some games. Desmond Ridder, he has some moments when he can be a solid, serviceable quarterback, but more times than not, he just isn't all that. He makes bad decisions with the football. He constantly throws the ball into double coverage. He is a really good athlete, but I don't think Desmond Ridder is really starting caliber material right now. And if he does eventually turn into a starting quarterback, I think it's going to be a couple of years down the road. He still looks like a rookie to me. He still looks like a deer in headlights. And when you are a team like Atlanta, and the identity of your offense is based on running the football, ball control, you need a quarterback who can take care of the football. And I keep hearing these Alex Smith comparisons to Desmond Ridder, and I keep telling people that being compared to Alex Smith in the year 2023 is not a compliment. If anything, it's kind of an insult. That means that you're not good enough to win a game, but you're never going to play bad enough to lose a game. That means you're a mid quarterback. Who wants to be labeled a mid quarterback? That's pretty much what Alex Smith was. At his peak, he was a really good game manager, but there's a reason why the Chiefs moved on from him. So I got the Falcons going 7-10. Their quarterback situation isn't good. Desmond Ridder is holding back the young playmakers that they have in that offense. Drake London, Kyle Pitts. Like, you got people calling Kyle Pitts a bust, and it's not anything to do with Kyle Pitts being a bust. Kyle Pitts just doesn't have a quarterback who can throw him the damn football. So I got the Falcons going 7-10. I think the Saints are going to finish 7-10 too. Like, they may win one more game than what I expected them to before the season started, but the Saints are the team that I thought that they would be. Saints fans thought that Derek Carr was all of a sudden going to be the missing piece to get that offense humming. They thought that Andy Dalton and Jameis Winston were holding the offense back. So they get Derek Carr. Everybody was happy about it. And everybody was saying, oh, Derek Carr never had a great defense with the Raiders, Well, he gets a great defense with the New Orleans Saints. And all that really does is, kind of make Derek Carr look just slightly better than what he was, because he has a defense that can bail him out from his mid play. That's what Derek Carr has been. He's been mid this season. Like, did you not see the Texans game? Game on the line, Derek Carr is throwing the fucking check down to Alvin Kamara. Are you freaking kidding me? You're throwing the check down pass to Alvin Kamara when you need the first down to keep the drive alive? You got Saints fans still calling out Pete Carmichael for the abysmal play calling, the conservative play calling. You got Saints fans who still want Dennis Allen fired. This is a mid-football team, people. And you can't really be surprised because you got a mid-quarterback and a below-average head coach. And although Derek Carr isn't a bad quarterback, he's not a quarterback that can elevate a team with subpar coaching. If he had Sean Payton calling the plays for him in New Orleans right now, the Saints probably would be winning this division at this moment. But I got them going 7-10. And the Carolina Panthers, I think eventually they'll be able to win 3 games. I don't know where those 3 losses are going to happen. Maybe they can steal a game against the Falcons or the Saints. I don't know, but this team is a complete clown show. Frank Wright, a couple of hours ago, it came out and announced that he is giving up play calling duties to his offensive coordinator, but I don't really know if it's going to make that big of a difference. You can't protect Bryce Young. You don't have any receivers outside of old man, 33-year-old Adam Thielen, who can consistently get open. The Panthers suck, dog. And their defense has played really well up to this point. But offense just can't get anything going. Again, I'm not about to say it's because of Bryce Young. Bryce Young, to me, was one of the greatest quarterback prospects that I've ever evaluated in recent memory. And the only way that you can mess up a great quarterback prospect like Bryce Young is due to poor coaching. You remember what happened to Trevor Lawrence's final season? Well, his first season with the Jaguars when he had Urban Meyer calling the plays and running the offense and running the team? Yeah, it was a disaster. If the Carolina Panthers fire Frank Wright at the end of this season and they bring in a better head coach like Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions, I definitely think that we will see the Bryce Young that Panthers fans were hoping for when they took him number 1 overall. But this team is terrible. And it doesn't matter, even if you did draft C.J. Stroud number 1 overall, he still would struggle too because the team is just shit. C.J. Stroud has a way better situation with the Houston Texans than what Bryce Young has with the Panthers. You got receivers that can separate. You got a good coaching staff. And even though you got a bad offensive line, you know, C.J. Stroud is still being able to make the most of it. Bryce Young, he's not C.J. Stroud. And even though I kind of had them as 1A, 1B, C.J. Stroud has definitely looked like the better quarterback up to this point. But Bryce Young is just in a terrible situation. So these are my updated NFC South record predictions. I got the Buccaneers winning the division now at 10-7. I got the Falcons and the Saints tied for second place, and I got the Panthers going 3-14. And when you look at the current standings right now, going into week 7, the Buccaneers are 3-2. I think that they probably should start to separate themselves from the rest of this division within the next couple of weeks. And when they play against the other teams in this division, I think they're pretty much going to have their way against everybody else because this is not a good division. This division is full of mid teams. The Panthers suck, the Falcons are mid, and the Saints are mid. The Buccaneers, to me, look like the best team in this division, and that's why I'm picking them to win this division at the moment. So before I move on to my next couple of segments, I got to get a drink of water real quick. You know, for those of y'all wondering why my voice sounds a little bit raspy, is because I was yelling at the damn TV all this weekend. I was yelling at Colorado for giving up a 29-0 lead after halftime. I was yelling at Kansas for calling some stupid plays, like, not related, but I was watching Kansas play against Oklahoma State, right? Because I had them on my parlay. All I needed was for Kansas to cover the -3. And it's a 4th-and-1 situation. Jason Bean has the ball in his hands. All they need to do is get 1 yard to keep the drive alive, right? So on 4th-and-1, you know, the rest of college football and the NFL, you know what they're doing on 4th-and-1? They're doing the quarterback tush push. Kansas decides to get cute and run a bubble screen on 4th-and-1, and of course, it didn't work because who didn't see that coming? Everybody knows that if you're not going to do the tush push, you're either going to try to run the ball up the middle or you're going to try to get something out fast on the edge. Like, that just blew me, man. So I was screaming at Kansas. Like, I was livid, man. I was livid. Now, you know who else I'm livid with? I'm livid with Bill Belichick, man. Bill Belichick, I believe that this is the final year that we're going to see him as the head coach of the New England Patriots, man. This team is a complete clown show. And I tried to give Bill Belichick the benefit of a doubt before the season started. I didn't believe that the Patriots would be bad enough to have a 1-5 record going into this point of the NFL season. I thought that they would be a well-coached football team that, although they may not have a lot of talent, they were going to be disciplined and they weren't going to be themselves. Well, I was wrong. Like, Bill Belichick has completely lost his damn mind as the GM and the head coach of the New England Patriots. I mean, this team has absolutely no talent on offense. Defensively, they're still really good despite the injuries that they suffered, like the Christian Gonzalez. Like, we talk about how good Jalen Carter has been. Christian Gonzalez was just as good. In the first couple of weeks that he was healthy, he was already playing like one of the best cornerbacks in the league. So they lose him for the remainder of this season. They also lost a couple of key guys on that defense. And offensively, I mean, this is the least talented offense in the NFL. Either them or the Carolina Panthers. Either or. I mean, they got no receivers. Their best receiver is Demario Douglas. And they're not even giving this fool opportunities. And him and Mac Jones have a good connection because they both are for the 904. So you think that you would try to help out Mac Jones and, give Demario Douglas more opportunities because him and Mac Jones already have good chemistry being from the city. But nah, like, Bill Belichick wanted to sit him for the rest of the game after he had a costly fumble Sunday night against the Miami Dolphins. That made no sense to me, and they just aren't giving Demario Douglas opportunities. And Demario Douglas is their most explosive wide receiver. Like, Kendrick Bourne is their number one option. I love Kendrick Bourne, but on a championship caliber team, he's probably a low-end wide receiver 2 or high-end wide receiver 3 at best. Devontae Parker. They paid this fool $30 million to drop clutch passes in big games. Like, did you not see Devontae Parker drop that big pass late in that game against the Las Vegas Raiders? Like, I rolled my eyes at that shit. I saw Mac Jones rolling his eyes after that drop. I was rolling my eyes too because, Bill, what made you think that it was smart to give Devontae Parker a 3-year, $30 million contract? When he's one of the worst receivers in the NFL when it comes to separating. Like, there's a reason why he's pretty solid at catching 50-50 balls. Because nearly every time you throw this fool the damn football, it is a 50-50 ball because he can't separate. I mean, this team is poorly designed. And you got to point the finger at Bill Belichick. Bill O'Brien, like, I don't think the play calling has been bad. It's just, what can he do when you got a limited offense? The offensive line can't block. I mean, did you see the safety that the Patriots gave up against the Raiders? Like, there were people on Twitter saying, Mac Jones is holding the ball too long. Like, fool! What do you expect Mac Jones to do? He can't get the ball out in 0.8 seconds when Max Crosby is beating your tight end. You tried to chip Max Crosby with a tight end. Obviously, that didn't work. And then he blew past whoever was the right tackle. Your quarterback can get the ball out fast, but he can't get the ball out as soon as he gets the snap. I mean, Mac Jones isn't good. We know this. But at the same time, you can't cook if you don't have the recipe or the ingredients to cook. And Mac Jones doesn't have that. Now, that doesn't excuse Mac Jones from his terrible play. I mean, this dude looks like Ray Charles out there. This dude, for some reason, just loves throwing the football to the opposing defense. And it makes no sense to me. Like, against the Dallas Cowboys, I know they got a great defense and all, but he made their defense look like one of the best defenses of all time. I mean, Mac Jones, I'm starting to wonder why he was a first-round pick. Because the more I watch him play, the more turned off I get by him. Like, this is the dude who was drafted to be the successor to Tom Brady. And the more that I watch the Patriots play without having Tom Brady, the more that I realize how Tom Brady was really the key to the Patriots' success. Tom Brady was Batman, and Bill Belichick was Robin. And I know it sounds a little bit tough to hear that, but let me ask y'all this. What is the Patriots way, right? The Patriots way, do your job, be accountable, right? But what was the one constant about the New England Patriots dynasty that throughout 2 decades always stayed the same? It was Tom Brady. Tom Brady was going through multiple receivers. He went from Randy Moss and Wes Welker to Julian Edelman and Chris Hogan, who was playing lacrosse. And Tom Brady got the hell out of there when he realized that Bill Belichick was just losing his damn mind. Like, Bill Belichick, when it comes to being able to assemble an elite offense, he just doesn't have it anymore. I mean, you got Hunter Henry. That's probably your most reliable option on offense. And then you got Mike Gesicki, who you can't really leave in because he sucks at blocking. Ramondre Stevenson, he's not having the same success this season that he had last season. Ezekiel Elliott had a big run last week against the Raiders, but it got called back because of a holding penalty. It's like Mac Jones is bad, okay, but the rest of the team around him is just as bad as he is. Everybody's bad. This is a toxic relationship, and I see why Bill Belichick is hesitant to bench Mac Jones, because him benching Mac Jones pretty much is the final nail in the coffin when it comes to him being the head coach of the Patriots. I mean, when you draft a quarterback in the first round, you need this dude to produce, because missing on a quarterback in the first round sets your franchise back several years. And not just does it set your franchise back, but most of the times when you miss on a quarterback in the first round, you're mostly out of a job. I mean, look at Robert Saleh and the Jets. They had to get on their knees, fly all the way out to California, and suck off Aaron Rodgers just to appease him to come to New York. And then he gets injured in 3 plays, and it kind of was panic mode. Now, although the Jets are making the best of the situation, they're hoping that Aaron Rodgers can come back quicker than expected. I mean, that's just what happens when you miss on a franchise quarterback in the first round. And Bill Belichick missing on Mac Jones? I mean, this is really the biggest reason why the Patriots are in the situation that they're in. You can say that the Patriots don't have a great team, but when you draft a quarterback in the first round, they are expected to overcome certain limitations that you may have on offense. Now, that doesn't mean that you can expect them to turn lemons into lemonade with the personnel that the Patriots have, but quarterbacks drafted in the first round are expected to be able to overcome deficiencies that you may have. For example, Joe Burrow took the Bengals to the Super Bowl in his second season with a great receiving core but a terrible offensive line. Like, I'm not saying that every quarterback needs a perfect situation to succeed. Better quarterbacks can overcome certain limitations on your offense and dysfunction, like Justin Herbert. Mac Jones isn't that kind of quarterback. He's not that kind of quarterback that's going to be able to elevate your team. For him to be good, he needs a good offensive coordinator, something that he hasn't had since Josh McDaniels. He needs a good supporting cast around him, something that he hasn't had since his rookie season. I mean, Bill Belichick has done a terrible job at developing Mac Jones. Now, Mac Jones, or Wack Jones as I should call him, he's not the player that I thought he was coming out. Coming out, I thought he was this well-mannered guy, first one in, last one out, not really a character issue. But the more I watch him play, the dude is, taking cheap shots at people's nutsacks. He's considered the dirtiest player in the NFL. His own teammates had to call him out for some of the nonsense that he's been pulling off. And I'm really surprised that Mac Jones kind of is the hothead that, people have now started to view him as, because I'm from Jacksonville. Mac Jones is from Jacksonville. And, the narrative about Mac Jones has always been, he's always been this well-mannered guy. Well, a couple of days ago, I had a homie of me telling me a story how Mac Jones has always kind of been a little bit of a hothead. He went to Bowles High School, right? Now, if you don't know what Bowles High School is a private school in Jacksonville. As a matter of fact, it's not even in Jacksonville. It's in Ponte Vedra. Ponte Vedra is close to Jacksonville, but it's kind of its own city. And to get into Bowles High School, you got to have a lot of money to pay the tuition. You also got to be really smart to go to that school, right? And plus, it's a private school also. So Mac Jones went to Bowles High School, and one day he just brought this big-ass boombox in the locker room and was just blasting rap music. During his freshman season in Alabama, he got involved in a DUI incident. He's kind of a little bit charismatic. He's a little bit hot-headed at times, and he can be really tense. And, this isn't the kind of guy that Bill Belichick is going to click with. At the end of the day, Bill Belichick is all about discipline. Bill Belichick is one of those old-school coaches that you do what he says and you don't have any answer back. Mac Jones always has an answer for something that Bill Belichick tells him to do, and that's why this relationship isn't working out. The quarterback is an extension of the head coach. And Mac Jones is a poor extension of Bill Belichick. So, anytime you have a toxic relationship between the quarterback and the head coach, what do you think that's going to mean for the team's offense? Because Bill Belichick, I truthfully believe that if there was a better quarterback out there during this offseason that the Patriots could have got their hands on, he would have replaced Mac Jones. Like, he was already done with Mac Jones last season when he decided to seek help outside of the organization with the Patriots' offensive struggles. Now, be it, Bill Belichick has done a great job at making things easy for Mac Jones. I mean, you gave this fool Matt Patricia as his offensive coordinator in his second season. The second season of a young quarterback's career is the most important because year 2 is where your young quarterback is supposed to make the biggest jumps. And you give this fool, Matt Patricia, a defensive coordinator who's never called a lick of offense ever, as his offensive play caller. You go from Josh McDaniels to Matt Patricia. Of course that shit was going to fail. And then when you look at how the Patriots offense has performed this season, I mean, they're nearly in the bottom of every statistical category on offense. Points per game, 31st, 12 points per game. Like, I'm a Steelers fan, and I hate watching my offense. Shoo! Watching the Patriots offense makes me a little bit happy to be a Steelers fan. Like, I'm not saying our offense is great, but I mean, watching this offense is like bringing a knife to a sword fight. It's like, I can go to the refrigerator, get me something out the freezer, put it on the plate, put it in the microwave for 2 minutes, come back after it's finished, and the Patriots offense is punting the ball back to the opposing offense. You know, like, they can't generate any explosive plays. They're not having any success on the ground. The offensive line is giving up a lot of sacks. The only thing that they can do well is find ways to score touchdowns in the red zone. And that's surprising that they have a good red zone offense. But I guess it makes sense because, I mean, they don't really make too many trips to the red zone anyway. This offense is a complete disaster. I mean, like, the Patriots are a mess. And I'm really surprised that, you know, the Patriots have really started to become a poorly coached team. You know, anytime you used to think about the New England Patriots, used to think about a team that was always well prepared, always paying attention to the small details. Antonio Brown said that the Patriots is one of the most organized and one of the most attention-based teams that he's ever played for. You know, like, there were times where Bill Belichick would know who the referees were going to be going into their game on Sundays, and he would prepare his team based on how often the referees will call certain penalties. So if he was having a refereeing crew that called a lot of holding penalties, his offensive lineman, he would make sure they put extra emphasis on not holding, having them block with boxing gloves on, or making sure that his defensive backs don't get called for a lot of pass interference penalties. Or if he had a crew that was calling in games that tend to let things play out and didn't really call a lot of penalties and was willing to let the DBs be physical, he would practice during the practices, he would tell the defensive backs, hey, like, we have a refereeing crew that is going to let you guys play, so be a little bit more physical. Like, Bill Belichick, over the last couple of years, he's starting to lose touch with it. You feel me? And this is the sign of a great coach who's starting to decline. And I don't think Andy Reid, during his final season in Philadelphia, was ever as bad as what Bill Belichick is right now. Bill Belichick, if he ends up getting fired, who else will offer him a head coaching opportunity? I mean, this is an offensive league. Yes, you still do need a great defense to win, and Bill Belichick is more than capable of putting an elite defense on the field. But you got to score points. And I mean, the Patriots offense is averaging 12 points per game. And Bill Belichick is in charge of not just coaching this team, but assembling the roster. You know, like, he's one of the only coaches in the NFL that has the ability not just to coach his team, but to pick the players on his team as well. And how many skill position players has Bill Belichick whiffed on in the draft? It seems like he's better at finding undrafted skill position players than he is at drafting them early in the draft. I mean, Tyquan Thornton, we haven't seen this fool yet. I mean, N'Keal Harry, of course, we not finna forget him. The only thing Bill Belichick is good at drafting high in the draft is offensive lineman and defensive lineman. And yes, you do have to be able to win up front. But you also got to have receivers that can get open to make things easy for your young quarterback. And Bill Belichick, he's dug his grave for the Patriots. I mean, I think this shit is over. I don't see how Bill Belichick returns as the New England Patriots head coach in 2024 unless he's just holding Robert Kraft hostage or they got a plan at quarterback. Unless they plan on taking for Caleb Williams, I don't see how Bill Belichick is going to be back next year. Because even getting Caleb Williams wouldn't solve all the issues they have. I mean, Bill O'Brien, I don't think he's that bad, but a lot of Patriots fans aren't happy with him. You got no receivers that can separate. Your offensive line can't give Mac Jones more than 1.3 seconds to throw the football. Mac Jones is Stevie Wonder. Anytime he drops back to throw, you got to close your eyes because it's most likely going to be going to the defense. I mean, Bill Belichick is done, people. He's done. And I'm somebody who admires great coaching because a lot of people in today's NFL, they just pay attention to the team on paper, right? They just pay attention to the roster, who the quarterback is, who the big names are. Nobody really pays attention to the coaching staff. And coaching is the most important piece to having a championship caliber team. How many times have you seen talented football teams underachieve? You want to know why? Because they're poorly coached. Look at where the Saints are right now. And even though the Patriots don't have a talented team, I mean, there are teams that have less talent than the Patriots that look way better than what they have. The Arizona Cardinals have been way more competitive this season than what the Patriots have been. I mean, they beat the damn Dallas Cowboys. The Patriots got blowed the hell out by the Dallas Cowboys. They got body bagged. They lost to the freaking Raiders. I picked them to beat the Raiders. I was like, although the Patriots are a bad team, there's no way Bill Belichick is going to lose to Josh McDaniels, especially with how the game went last year. Well, nah, they lost to Josh McDaniels and the Raiders, bro. Like, after witnessing the Patriots lose to the Las Vegas Raiders and me seeing Bill Belichick throw that towel on the ground, like, I felt them. I felt this pain. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of Patriots fans who want to break their TVs anytime they see that damn offense take the field. Hell, I damn near want to break my TV anytime I see Matt Canada's face popping up on the Jumbotron or being shown on the television prompter. I'd be like, bro, get this fool out of my eyesight. You feel me? It's like anytime I see the Patriots offense, I'm like, bro, get this shit off my TV screen. It's awful. Anytime I see Mac Jones, I want to puke. I don't even call him Mac Jones anymore. My new nickname for Mac Jones is Whack Jones because he just isn't good. He's whack. Now, could be a serviceable starter on another team in a tailor-made situation. Like, there was a reason why Kyle Shanahan wanted to draft him over Trey Lance. And he would be a really good QB with the 49ers right now if he was drafted because he was drafted into a perfect fit, a good system, West Coast style offense with a great team around him. You see, Mac Jones was a limited quarterback coming out of Alabama. The things that made Mac Jones a first-round pick was his ability to read defenses, get the ball out fast, and make good decisions with the football. And all three of those things he hasn't been able to do the last 2 years. And Bill Belichick is a reason for that because he's hurt his development. Bill Belichick is done, people. He's done. The College Football Playoff Committee always does a horrible job with their playoff ranking. So this year, I'm taking it upon myself to help the committee out. And no, they're not cutting me a check. I'm doing it for free. I'm going to give you guys my mid-season college football playoff rankings, all right? Now, these are going to look a lot different from most people's playoff rankings because I'm not somebody who's just going to crown the team just because they're undefeated. Like, I care about who you play, your strength of schedule. Like, if you're somebody like Michigan and you're just beating up on garbage teams, I'm sorry, but you're not going to get a lot of respect from me. And just a quick disclaimer, Michigan, where I have them ranked, a lot of you guys are going to be really upset, but you got to listen to my explanation for it, right? So at 25 through 21, I got Florida 5-2. Like, Florida is a really solid football team. And a lot of people counted out Florida before this season because they had Graham Mertz and nobody really seemed to be a big believer in Billy Napier. Now, I'm not going to say I was high on Florida coming in, but I didn't think they were going to be a team that won only 5 games or less. You feel me? Like, I got a little bit more respect for Billy Napier. I watched this dude when he was coaching at Louisiana with the Raging Cajuns, so I'm a little bit biased towards him. And they got some pretty quality wins. You know, even though they lost to Utah, they recently beat South Carolina, and they still got a really impressive victory over Tennessee. James Madison is in that 24. They're 6-0. I think they're one of the best G5 schools in America right now. I mean, they went absolutely ballistic on Georgia Southern. And I kind of thought that game was a little bit of a coin flip. Now I went with James Madison to win, but I didn't think they were going to crush Georgia Southern the way that they did. I mean, they got a high-powered offense. Their defense is pretty solid. So James Madison, I got them in at 24, and it's really disappointed that even if they win their conference in the regular season, they may not be able to make it to the conference championship game or participate in the bowl game because they come from the FCS. And anytime you come from the FCS to the FBS, there's a waiting period that you got to go through until you're eligible to compete for conference championships and to be able to go bowling. It's really retarded. It's another reason why you should hate the NCAA executives or whoever runs this damn sport. But James Madison, they're 24 for me. Air Force is at 23. Like James Madison, they are a really good G5 program, and this is a really good Air Force team. This is probably an Air Force team that should easily get to 10 wins this season. Now, Iowa, they're at 22. Now, I didn't want to put Iowa on here because I don't really like watching Iowa play. Like, they're a boring team to watch. I mean, they're all defense, 0 offense. And even when Cade McNamara was healthy, the offense still wasn't all that great. And it's like their defense tends to be their best offense. I mean, Iowa, even though, you know, they're a terrible team to watch in terms of entertainment value, I respect the fact that they play true to themselves. They know who they are. They know they're not going to have a great offense. They're going to beat you with great defense, great special teams play, and win in the field position battle. And they recently just beat Wisconsin. So right now, they're in first place in the Big Ten West. Louisville, they're at 21. I know they suffered a really ugly first loss to Pitt, but I can't drop them out of the top 25 because that win over Notre Dame is still a really big win. And Louisville is still a really good team. Like, nobody expected Louisville to go undefeated this year. We knew that they were going to slip up eventually. And they probably will have a couple more losses before the season concludes. But they only got 1 loss at this moment. And they got a really big win over Notre Dame. So with that win over Notre Dame, I can't drop them out of the top 25. Now moving on to my next 5 teams. USC is at 20. They got dominated by Notre Dame on the road in South Bend. That was a really ugly game. And you can't even blame it on the defense. Like, everybody wants to put it on Alex Grinch, but, I mean, their offense had 4 turnovers. Caleb Williams by himself had 3 interceptions in the first half, which led to 21 points for Notre Dame. And then that doesn't include the other scoop and score that they got, and plus the special teams touchdown that they got off that kick return. So pretty much Notre Dame, you know, defensively and via special teams scored 35 points thanks to the assistance of USC not being able to take care of the football. USC, I don't think they are an overrated team, but I do think that in terms of where they rank amongst the Oregons and the Washingtons of the Pac-12, I don't think they're up there. But that doesn't mean that I think that they're not going to have a shot to win that conference, because how many games are we going to see Caleb Williams have where he throws 3 interceptions? Not too many. All right, and I think Caleb Williams is going to bounce back. This is still one of the best offenses in college football. Their offensive line isn't as good as what we initially thought, but we got a lot of football to be played, people. And I think it's too premature to count out USC when they still got a really talented team. Like, we know they're not a great defense, okay? The reason why USC is USC is because what they can do offensively. And I still don't really think that there's too many defenses in the Pac-12 that's going to be able to shut them down. I don't think Oregon's going to be able to shut them down, and I don't think Washington's going to be able to completely shut this team down unless Caleb Williams just has another stinker performance in those games. Tennessee is at 19. Now, I struggled with where I was going to put Tennessee because I don't really think they got a great win. You feel me? I think they're more hanging on to where their preseason ranking was. And they did lose to Florida also. And they got a really big test this week against Alabama. If they lose Alabama, they're done. Duke is at 18. Duke has a really good win against Clemson. And Clemson isn't on this ranking, but I have them on my top 50 teams list. And with the fact that Duke has a top 50 win against them, and they did play Notre Dame pretty close, I got them at 18. And they play FSU this week. Now, one thing about Duke, they're not a super talented football team, but they're well coached, they're disciplined, and they got a fantastic defense. So I think they're going to be able to hang around with FSU. I'll be surprised if FSU just clobbers Duke. Missouri is at 17. Now, Missouri, you got to remember that they got a really nice win against Kansas State really early in the season. Now, they did have a pretty ugly loss that kind of came out of nowhere not too long ago. Well, yeah, they lost to LSU, I believe, right? And they could have won that game, in my opinion. But they bounced back in a major way, beating Kentucky. And Kentucky was ranked in the top 25. And people equate, where a team should be ranked based on top 25 wins. It's not just top 25 wins that I'm going off of. I'm going off how many top 50 wins do you have? How many top 30 wins do you have? Missouri has 2 or 3 of them. And they're 6-1 right now. They got a really good offense. Brady Cook is playing some fantastic football. Luther Burden has looked like arguably the best receiver in college football this year. So look out for Missouri. I potentially think they could end up being the second place team in the SEC East this year. And LSU is at number 16. Yes, they got 2 losses, but they may be the second best 2-loss team in America behind Notre Dame. They lost to Alabama. Well, they lost to FSU, and then they lost to Ole Miss. But that was a really close loss, right? They beat Missouri, and I think LSU, even though they got a terrible defense, they're going to be able to hang around with most of the teams that they play because of how good Jaden Daniels and that offense is. So, yes, they got 2 losses. You may argue and say they deserve to be a little bit lower on the list. They still got better quality wins with that win over Missouri than what Duke, Tennessee, or USC have. Now, this is where things really start to get spicy, right? Utah is at number 15. I'm not that high on Utah. Yes, they beat Florida earlier, right? And you like the fact that despite all the injuries they have, they're 5-1. But they lost to Oregon State. Okay, and even if Cam Rising comes back, when he comes back, Utah's schedule is about to get really tough. And I think that they're about to take a lot of losses within the next couple of weeks. Now, I'm not saying that their season is going to completely fall off the rails, but I'm a little bit lower on Utah than what most people are. They're banged up. They're just finding ways to win games. Eventually, when they end up starting to play some of the better teams on their schedule, they're not going to be able to hang around. Their defense may keep them around for a quarter or two, but you still got to be able to score some points. And Utah struggles to do that. Oregon State is at 14. They got to win against Utah. I'm not really all that thrilled with what I've seen out of DJ Uiagalelei, but, I got them at 14. They're still in the mix. Notre Dame is the best 2-loss team in America, all right? They got the toughest schedule in college football. These fools had to play Ohio State, then they had to play Duke, then they had to play Louisville, then they had to play USC, and they're still not done. They still got to play a gauntlet of a schedule. So it's like Notre Dame, if they win out, they definitely could be in the conversation to be the first 2-loss team to get into the college football playoffs, because when you play a schedule this difficult, you got to get a lot of props for that. Meanwhile, you got schools like Michigan and people parading around like Michigan is just such a great team. Like, they haven't proven that. They've beaten up on garbage teams. Notre Dame, they're going out here and they're scheduling tough teams, and they got to play great teams every single week in and week out. It's no cupcakes really on Notre Dame's schedule. and they're 6-2. And they just destroyed USC. Regardless how you feel about USC, a win is a win. So they beat Duke. They beat USC. I mean, they were competitive with Ohio State. I mean, yeah, they had a bad loss to Louisville, but it's like, look how damn tough their schedule is. So Notre Dame, I don't think they're completely out the mix yet in terms of them being able to make the college football playoffs. Ole Miss is lingering around that 12. Now, I wanted to drop Ole Miss a little bit lower, but I still got to respect the fact that they did beat LSU. And this is one of the best teams that Lane Kiffin has had in a while. Now, they don't play defense at all, but this is his most talented offense. Jackson Dart looks like a borderline Heisman candidate. You got great receivers. You got Quinshon Judkins, one of the better backs in college football, and a pretty solid offensive line. Now, they're getting into the meat and potatoes of their schedule, right? And they did get blowed out by Alabama. It wasn't really close. But outside of that loss, Ole Miss has looked like a really good team, and they're still lingering around in the SEC West division picture. If Alabama slips up a couple of times, they lose to Tennessee, they lose to LSU potentially, Ole Miss, as long as they don't suffer any more hiccups within conference, they could easily steal the SEC West from Alabama. Now at 11, I got Oregon. Oregon, I didn't drop them too far after losing to Washington because Washington is a great team. I had Washington winning the Pac-12 conference before this season began, and you guys can go ahead and check out that video. I got it up. It didn't really get a lot of views for some reason. I thought that it would because, like, I literally put in the title, the Washington Huskies are going to win the Pac-12 this year. Don't know why people didn't watch that, but whatever. Go ahead and check it out if you haven't already. And Oregon, they probably could have won that game if it wasn't for Dan Lanning's aggressiveness. You know, his aggressiveness kind of got the better of them, and that's why they kind of lost that game. Now we get into my top 10. Now, this is where things get controversial, right? I'm going to just come out and say it. I got Michigan at number 6 because who the hell have they played? Nobody. I mean, I can't give you respect if you're beating up on bad teams, and I don't care about the metrics. I don't care about the point differential. Like, you're Michigan. You're literally, like, supposed to be the second best team in college football. Like, I expect you to beat up on Indiana. I expect you to beat up on Bowling Green. You don't get no brownie points for that. Ohio State has beaten Notre Dame. You know, they beat Maryland. Both of those two teams are better than anybody that Michigan has played up to this point on their schedule. So it's like, yeah, Michigan is a great team, and them being at number 6 isn't because I don't think they are good enough to win a national championship. It's just that right now, going into week 8, they don't have any big wins that can make me put them in the top 5 over the teams that I have ranked ahead of them, right? The teams that I have ranked ahead of Michigan all have way better wins, and I've played way tougher schedules than what Michigan has played up to this point. Now, you can say, well, JT, Michigan can't help the fact that they got to play the teams in their conference. Okay, like, cool, but it's still like, I got to penalize you for it. Like, I'm not going to give you brownie points for beating up on bad teams. At least Georgia blew out Kentucky. Kentucky is better than any team that Michigan has played up to this point. So I just got to get that out the way. I'm not hating on Michigan. It's just that they don't have a resume building win yet for me to put them in the top 4 or the top 3. I feel like that's disrespectful to the teams that actually have played great teams and scheduled great out-of-conference opponents. You feel me? If you want respect out of me, you need to show it on the field, and you need to beat great teams. Now, I got UNC at number 10. I still am not a believer in UNC, but they beat my Miami Hurricanes. So I got to put them in the top 10, and I got to give them their props, okay? That defense is playing fantastic under Gene Chizik. Like, this is the first time in forever that UNC has actually had a respectable defense. Drake May has looked like the second best QB in college football all year long behind Caleb Williams, and they got a really great team around them. Texas, I still think that Texas has one of the best wins in all of college football. Like, it doesn't matter if Alabama takes another loss or two, right? Winning on the road in Tuscaloosa is something that is still very hard to do. And not any team can go on the road and win at Tuscaloosa. You got to be a damn good team to do that. And yes, they did lose to Oklahoma, but that may be the best loss out of any team inside the top 10 on my rankings that has one loss on their schedule. So Texas, yeah, it's a little bit disappointing that they lost to Oklahoma, but they still got a really great win against Bama. And Bama, like, you may feel like they should be a little bit lower, but let's not forget, they beat Ole Miss. And ever since that Texas loss, I mean, yeah, they aren't really dominating the way that they used to dominate in the past, but it doesn't really matter. They're winning games, and they beat the tar out of Ole Miss. Like, I believe the score is 24-3 when they played Ole Miss? And if they beat Tennessee, you still got to have them in the top 10. Now, Penn State, I feel the same way about them that I do Michigan. And I love Penn State. I love me some Drew Aller. And I hope that they can get a big-time win and James Franklin can finally get his big one against Ohio State this week. But same thing I said about Michigan. I can't put you in my top 5 until you can actually prove that you're capable of beating a quality opponent. And Penn State, like Michigan, has cruised through their schedule and haven't really played anybody that great. So until Penn State and Michigan can get some big signature wins on their schedule, I'm not going to have them in my top 5. Like, one thing that I think the committee gets wrong is that they don't penalize teams enough for not having great schedules. Like, I can't put you in my top 5 just because you're a talented football team. Like, the teams ahead of Penn State and Michigan are talented too, and they play difficult schedules. Like, Florida State, for example, they beat Clemson and they beat LSU. And if they beat Duke, they'll have 3 better wins than anything that Penn State or Michigan have up to this point. And I just think that having Penn State and Michigan ahead of any team that has better wins than them is just disrespectful. And you're a little bit delusional if you have Michigan and Penn State over any team that has played a tougher schedule than them. Like, I'm not just rewarding teams because they got a talented roster. Like, you got to beat some good teams for me to have you high on these rankings. And I know you guys are going to get upset with that, but that's just how I feel these rankings should go. Like, strength of schedule should matter. Strength of wins should matter. And Michigan and Penn State don't have any strong wins. Now for my top 5. I got Oklahoma at number 5. They got the best win out of any team in college football right now. They beat Texas when Texas was at their peak, and not a lot of people believe that Oklahoma will be able to get the job done. Now, they play Kansas this week, right? Kansas is a top 40 team to me. Even without Jalen Daniels, like, they're still a more than capable team. Now, I see somebody in the comment section says, I feel Michigan is a complete team. Like, Michigan is a great team. That's not what this is about. You can be a great team, but you still got to have the wins to go with it. You got to have the strength of schedule to go with it. And Oklahoma has a way better win beating Texas than what Michigan has. What is Michigan's best win? Michigan's best win up to this point doesn't compare to Oklahoma's or Washington. Washington just beat Oregon. Even though they beat Oregon at home, like, that's a top 10 team. So they deserve to be in the top 5 over a school like Michigan or Penn State. Like, this isn't about talent. It's about what have you done to prove yourself. You feel me? And Michigan hasn't proven that they deserve to be in this top 5 just as yet. You got to have the schedule. You got to have the resume, and you got to have the strength of wins. That's what I'm going off of. And Michigan and Penn State don't have those yet. Florida State, same thing. Like, Florida State has wins against Clemson, who is a top 50 team, and they got a win over LSU, who's ranked. So you got Oklahoma, Washington, and FSU, who all 3 have played way more tougher schedules and have way bigger wins to build up their resume than what Penn State and Michigan have. Now, Georgia, this is probably going to be where a lot of people are like, oh, you're a hypocrite. Like, you're going to penalize Michigan and Penn State, but you got Georgia at number 2. Are we forgetting that Georgia just completely dismantled Kentucky? Like, Kentucky is a 2-loss team, and they're better than any team that Penn State or Michigan have played. And even though Georgia has their hiccups and they have their moments, like, they still are able to get up and play their best football against some of the best teams that they have to face on their schedule. So them beating Kentucky is a big win for them. Okay, like, Kentucky, they're not in the top 25, but that's a top 30, top 40, top 50 win. And Kentucky is still better than any team that Michigan and Penn State have played. Now, you can argue and say that Georgia should be behind Oklahoma, Washington, and FSU. Okay, I can understand that. And I wouldn't even disagree with you on that. All right. Now, number one, I got Ohio State. Like, Ohio State beat Notre Dame on the road in South Bend. They also have beaten Maryland, which I don't really know how great of a win that is anymore because those fools just got upset by Illinois. But Ohio State, to their credit, that win against Notre Dame means a lot to me. So I got them at number one. So these are my top 25 college football playoff rankings going into the middle of the college football season, or week 8. So you guys let me know how you guys feel about my playoff rankings down in the comment section down below. I got 2 more things I want to touch on before I get on out of here. I got to take one more drink of water. Shout out to everybody in the chat. If you haven't already, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. We go live Monday through Thursday around 9 p.m. Eastern time. Check out the JT Sports Podcast if you are enjoying tonight's episode. We're available on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon. Rate us 5 stars. Share the podcast if you enjoy and you want to support the channel. Okay. Now, we witnessed one of the best games played so far throughout this college football season. Washington versus Oregon was a classic, okay? And this was a tale of 2 halves. Because in the first half, Washington came out just absolutely slinging the damn football. Like, Micheal Penix and Washington were letting it rip in the first half. It was big play after big play after big play. But then in the second half, Oregon started to take control of the game. And when Oregon took the lead late in the fourth quarter, you kind of felt like Oregon was going to be able to win the game. But what hurt Oregon in this game was the fact that I feel like Dan Lanning was too aggressive in this game. Like, before halftime, instead of opting to kick the field goal and tie the game up, I believe it was 22-18 going into halftime, you kick that field goal is what? 19, 20, 21. So, like, you still don't tie the game up, but at least you don't go in the halftime empty-handed. Like, I understand wanting to be aggressive and wanting to go up and going to halftime with the lead, but I mean, this isn't Madden or NCAA. This is real-life football. And in that situation, if you're Dan Lanning, you got to take the points. Okay, like, I don't think it's smart to try to be aggressive before a halftime when Washington's offense is already humming on all cylinders. Like, you need all the points that you can get. And them not kicking that field goal, taking those easy 3 points, kind of is what costed them this game. And then late in this game, in the full quarter, they went for it on 4th and 3. Like, Dan Lanning is a defensive-minded coach. Your defense was playing outstanding in the second half, so why not force Washington to have to drive, 80-something yards downfield to score? Like, if you think that your defense isn't going to be able to get the stop, then I understand you going for it. But at the same time, if you know your defense isn't going to be able to get the stop, you got to understand that, oh shit, like, if they stop us here, they got an easier chance of scoring because they don't got to drive the length of the field versus us just going ahead and punting it. So I feel like those decisions, not taking the points before a halftime, going for the touchdown, and then going for it on 4th and 3 late in the fourth quarter, which ultimately led to Washington driving down the field and winning the game, is what costed Oregon this game. Now, a lot of people are probably going to say, JT, what lost this game for Oregon was the fact that that kicker missed the field goal, which would have sent the game to overtime, which is true. But remember, if Oregon just would have punted the football and forced Washington to have to drive the length of the field, maybe they win that game. Because it's not like Washington's offense was as hot as what it was in the first half. In the second half, that offense kind of started to cool down a little bit, and Oregon still had a little bit of momentum. It's not like if you punt the football, Washington automatically would have taken the lead. So it's like Oregon played a really great game. Bo Nix balled out, but Dan Lanning's aggressiveness, I felt is what costed Oregon this win. Now for Washington, this is one of the best teams in all of college football. And I picked this team to win the Pac-12 for a reason. I feel like they got a really great offensive line. They got a really good defensive line. And although their defense may not be that great on the back end as what you would hope for it to be in terms of them being a potential playoff contender, but I think their defense is good enough that they can get a couple of key stops against some of the big boys in college football. You see, I don't think you need a elite defense to win a national championship. I think you need a top 50 defense at worst if you want to be a championship caliber football team, which I believe Washington has. Like in this game, it wasn't like Oregon was going up and down the field every single drive on Washington's defense. Like Washington's defense came away with a couple of big stops. So the fact that Washington's defense was able to get stops on Oregon's offense should show you that this is a defense that's good enough to slow down any offense that they match up against, rather it be Georgia, Oklahoma, Texas, or whoever. If you can slow down Oregon's offense, you can slow down any offense because they got one of the best quarterbacks in college football and they got one of the best offenses in college football. Now, Washington, what kind of concerns me is that yes, Micheal Penix played well, but he doesn't necessarily play well when he has guys in his face. And he doesn't really throw well on the run. But he balled out in this game. Like, anytime he took a shot downfield, it seemed like it was money every single time. You had Poku was going crazy. McMillan got injured early, but you had Romeo Odunze who was going off. Like, he made big play after big play for Washington. Like, Washington is deep at receiver. And they're deep on the offensive line. And their run game, yeah, in the stat box, it shows that they had 99 rushing yards. But I think Washington is one of those teams that they can run the football if they want to. They just don't want to run the football because why run the football if you can get 20, 30 yards every single time you throw the football downfield? Like Washington, this offense is legit. They're explosive. They can beat you on every single level, short, intermediate, down the field. There's not too many defenses that are 4, 5 defensive backs deep that can cover a wide receiving core this deep and this talented. Some people may argue and say that Ohio State has the best receiving core in college football, but I think it's Washington. And I said that before the season, and a lot of people hated on me for that. But when you look at how this wide receiving core performed against Oregon, like, I don't see how you can't at least give them props and say, you know, at least they got the second best wide receiving core in college football. But looking at Washington and the fact that they beat Oregon 36-33 kind of cemented them as the top team in the Pac-12 this year. Now, if they play Oregon again in a rematch, you know, I probably would take Oregon because you don't really want to see a team like Oregon twice. Because Oregon probably would have won this game if Dan Lanning, you know, didn't let his aggressiveness get the best of him. But for the most part, you know, this was a damn great game. This was one of those games that you watch and you didn't really want it to end. You know, you wanted it to keep going. You wanted it to go into overtime because it was a back and forth game. Because at one point, it seemed like Washington was going to run away with this game. And then Oregon comes back into the second half like a bat out of hell, and they just gained all the momentum. But then, late in the fourth quarter, you know, they go for it on 4th and 3. They don't get it, and Washington has a short length of field to go to score, and Washington ultimately is able to take the lead and eventually win the game. Colorado was up 29-0 at halftime, right? And I ended up falling asleep in this game, right? Because I thought Colorado already had this damn game. When I was like, man, they are 29-0 on Stanford. I'm going to bed. I'm tired. Well, I wake up at 4 a.m. and I check my damn cell phone. I go on the Bleach Report app, and these fools done. These fools showed the 29-point lead, dog. I could not believe what the hell I was watching when I was watching the replay of this game. You talk about a complete collapse. I mean, this was the collapse of the great Roman Empire. You're up 29-0 against Stanford, one of the worst teams in all of college football. How the hell do you blow this big of a lead? Well, in the second half, Colorado just completely lost it. They were undisciplined. They had stupid penalties. Like, they had countless penalties where they had too many men on the field. You feel me? Or guys weren't in positions to make plays. And Coach Prime, I love him. I believe in Deion Sanders. But in this game, I kind of noticed a couple of his flaws. The first one is that I don't understand why he allows 23 to stay in the game, get cooked, and not even give Cormani McClain at least a chance. You feel me? Like, Cormani McClain obviously should be the team's second best cornerback. Now, he has had his moments where he hasn't looked good, like against Arizona State, but he also had some moments where he looked great, like against USC. So I don't understand why you don't give Cormani McClain at least a chance in this game, because, I mean, nobody really could stop any of Stanford's receivers. Like, even Travis Hunter was getting routed up. You know, like, there was a touchdown that this Stanford receiver caught on Travis Hunter and damn near took his fucking helmet off. And I was like, Travis Hunter, like, what's going on with you today, man? Now, Travis Hunter was making plays. It's just that, you know, I guess he kind of got a little bit tired. And plus, that was his first game back from injury. So I'm going to cut him some slack. But this team had 17 penalties for 127 yards. It's like they couldn't stop stepping on their own toes. They couldn't stop stepping on their shoes. And Stanford, in the second half, was a more disciplined team. They didn't have the same amount of costly mistakes that Colorado did. And Colorado, remind you, was a, 13-point favorite going into this game? You want to know how you get upset? Turnovers and penalties. That's what killed Colorado in this game. This team wasn't disciplined. And Deion Sanders can say all he wants about how the players got to execute and whatnot. At the same time, your team is a reflection of who you are as a head coach. So he can talk about how, man, when we went in the halftime, like, I felt we were getting complacent. Okay, make some adjustments. You were getting complacent, Deion. You were getting complacent with allowing number 23, Stoudemire, to be on the field getting cooked. Like, Stanford was running whoever offense on him. I don't care what Cormani McClain or what Amarion Miller did during the week. What's so great about 23's practice habits that allowed you to start him and allow him to play the whole entire game getting cooked, but yet Cormani McClain can't even get at least 1 or 2 snaps to show what he can do. Like, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. You feel me? And I understand that, you know, Deion Sanders, he's a disciplinarian. Like, he wants to get his point across to the players. But it's like, you know, this team lost because this team just didn't make great adjustments. Like, yes, the players got to execute. You feel me? But at the same time, as a head coach, you just can't allow, you know, one of your cornerbacks, when you're a Hall of Fame cornerback, to just get cooked play after play after play. Like, Stanford ran whoever offense on 23, man. Anytime a team is running whoever offense on you, that means you suck. Now, I don't mean to take any personal shots at Deion or any player on Colorado's roster. I'm just being blunt and calling this shit how I see it. You know, like, as a coach, I'm not about to allow a cornerback continue to get toasted and me not make no changes. Like, there's no way I'm about to sit on the sideline being Deion Sanders and just let one cornerback just get toasted play after play. Like, I'm going to make some changes. And people say, well, Travis Hunter was getting killed too. Okay, that's one thing. You feel me? This is Travis Hunter. I know what he can do, but he's not as big as a liability as what 23 was. Like, Deion Sanders, I think he has to do a good amount of reflecting as well, just like how the rest of this team has to reflect. I mean, everybody's responsible for this 29-point lead. And Deion Sanders, is not like he doesn't take any accountability, but I feel like he needs to take more accountability for the lack of adjustments made on his part. There's just no way he could allow 23 just to get cooked all game and make no adjustments. And it's like, as a head coach, you know, when you see 23 getting cooked like that, you got to try to make sure that this dude doesn't lose all his confidence. You feel me? Like, when him and 23 were going back and forth on the sidelines, that's a dude who was frustrated. He lost confidence. You know, like, he got several pass interference calls in the fourth quarter on him, which hurt the team. When you're Deion Sanders, you can't allow one player to just hurt the team. You got to put your ego aside and put your team in the best position to win. And it's like, I'm not saying Cormani McClain would have done better than 23, but it's like, you have to put somebody else out there. Because, I mean, they were running whoever offense on him. And Sheduer Sanders, like, he's your best player. You know, this team has won 4 games because of Sheduer Sanders' ability to rise his game in big moments. But it's like you can't have him throwing stupid interceptions in overtime. Like that interception that he threw, he literally just threw that shit up. Like that's something that I've never seen Sheduer Sanders do. Even when he was playing at Jackson State, like Sheduer Sanders is normally a pretty calm and composed player, especially in high pressure situations. But in that situation, like he just said, F it. That was a panic interception. Like that throw was made out of panic. It was just like, F it. I got to make a play. So I'm going to just throw something up and hope I can make something out of it. You know, like Colorado was not disciplined in this game. And that falls on the coaching. Because at the end of the day, your team is a reflection of who you are as a head coach. Now, I'm going to give props to Stanford for winning this game. You feel me? Because you still got to give respect to the winner. So Stanford, if you're a Stanford Cardinal fan, shout out to you. You played a great game. You didn't give up. You believed in yourself. And you hung around and you eventually pulled off the upset. But at the end of the day, Colorado gave this game away. Like, look at the penalties. They had 17 penalties for 127 yards. Stanford had only 7. Like, Colorado just wasn't a disciplined football team. And I don't know for the life of me why they forget to run the damn football. Like, all McCaskill was rolling in the first quarter. And then after that, they just forgot about him. Like, this team sometimes tends to get away from what's successful. You feel me? So, when I think about Colorado and what they can learn from this game moving forward, I still think they're going to make it to a bowl game. Like, I think they're going to pull off an upset against UCLA, Utah, whoever. Like, there's not a single team on Colorado's schedule that I don't think they have a chance at not being able to beat. Like, this is the Pac-12. If you watch the Pac-12, you know that this conference is notorious for late season slip-ups. This is normally around the time where we start to see a lot of upsets occur in this conference. You know, like, this offense is good enough that as long as Sheduer Sanders just has a little bit of protection, they can put 30, 40 on you. And with how good this offense is, how good the receivers are, this defense can be as bad as what it wants to. I mean, they can outscore nearly anybody on their best day as long as they're playing disciplined football and they're not killing themselves with penalties. So I still believe that Colorado is going to make it to a bowl game. I told you guys this before the season started, and I'm not switching up now. Colorado is going to be a bowl-eligible team this year. Like, you guys can go back and watch all of my Colorado videos before the season. Like, I had these boys beating TCU. Like, there's people who hit me up every single time Colorado loses. You still believe in Coach Prime? Oh, your prediction isn't aging well. Like, bro, like, y'all act like Colorado was supposed to be winning the national championship this year. I knew they weren't going to be that great, but I didn't believe they were going to be bad enough where they won't be able to make it to a bowl game. Like, at the end of the day, Colorado still is a solid team. Like, you can tell this is a team that was built from the portal. You feel me? So, of course, they're not going to be great. They're going to have a lot of deficiencies. But the fact that they got 2 great players in Travis Hunter and Sheduer Sanders, a great offensive coordinator, Sean Lewis, and a good group of wide receivers, that's going to allow them to hang in the majority of games that they play in. Like, Oregon State, Washington State aren't miles better than Colorado. Like, Colorado can beat Oregon State. They can beat Washington State. They can beat UCLA. Like, Dante Moore hasn't looked that hot. So I still believe in Colorado moving forward. I still think they're going to be able to win 2 more games and become bowl eligible. I'm not giving up on Coach Prime. I still believe in them. But this loss to Stanford, I believe, was a reality check that they needed. This is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Hopefully, when I go live again, my voice is going to be way more better. Like, it was very hard to get through with this episode, but if you haven't already, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Check out the audio version of this podcast available on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon. Give us a 5-star review if you enjoyed tonight's episode and you want to support the channel. I appreciate everybody for tuning in, and I will see you guys tomorrow with another episode of the JT Sports Podcast.